independent journalist. Now it's time to get started. Thank you all so much for tuning in to our daily podcast. You are now listening to Mi Casa es Su Casa, and I am your host, Nico House. As usual, I do want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you are not already, make sure you donate to that one follow $1 campaign on Patreon. You can do so by going to www.patreon.com/MiCasaEsSuCasa and just donating $1. That's our way of showing the mainstream media that if they will not invest in the truth, then we will, of course, invest in those who do. Now, I do want to go ahead and jump into this podcast because, well, if you're watching from either Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, you probably have been waiting for the last hour and a half for me to get ready. For my podcast viewers, our listeners, this is actually a new format that I'm trying where we will get Twitter and Facebook and YouTube involved in the podcast as we are recording it, taking live comments, live questions, and getting their input as we develop any issue, or develop any conversation on any issue that we may be discussing. Now, this issue in particular has raised a lot of eyebrows. As you all know, it was about 6 days ago the Parkland shooting took place, and the Parkland shooting happened at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, and it was committed allegedly by one Nicholas De Cruz. Now, for those of you who do not know, I actually live in the area. I live right down the street, probably maybe a 7 to 8 minute drive without traffic. Now, of course, this is South Florida, very close to Miami, so if there is traffic, it could take another 45 minutes. But given that this is like I said, it's very much so in close proximity, and it's actually in Debbie Wasserman Schultz congressional district, and I'm gonna actually explain why that's important in a little bit. Now, there has been a lot of conversation surrounding this issue, talking about whether or not it's a false flag. Are there crisis actors? Is it real? Is it fake? So I will say this: the shooting itself was real, period, point blank. That is the end of that story, if there ever was going to be a story started. So if you came here for me to tell you that the shooting did not happen, then I apologize, because that's not what we're going to talk about today. Now you all know me, and you also know that the situation is also much more nuanced, and people's complaints or people's worry is warranted. Seriously, the worries that people have are warranted, and I'm going to actually go into why those worries are legitimate in this video. And hopefully, I'm not gonna lie, by the time this video is over, my goal is that you'll have more questions than answers. I know it sounds messed up, but I promise you there's a method to the madness. Now, if you're listening to us on YouTube or Twitter right now, or Facebook, make sure that you're sharing this post, because I believe it's very important. It'll clarify a lot and hopefully give you a good perspective on maybe helping other people understand, like, that not everything is a false flag, and that we might be looking in the wrong direction to find the answers that are right in front of us, which unfortunately tends to happen a lot. We're in a United States where disinformation is running rampant, right? We already know that John Brennan was in charge of a disinformation campaign the moment he left being the director of the CIA. We know that it was in the 80s when they came out and said, yeah, it's a disinformation campaign, and we have people working in the broadcasting industry and the news industry and the newspaper industry, including the New York Times, CNN, and I mean, they have people working in Hollywood. I mean, so that's the norm, unfortunately. So that is true. If you are questioning any narrative that you are seeing shoved in your mouth, then yeah, actually you're on the right path. Once again, the shooting happened. These are not quote unquote crisis actors. I have had it verified that all of these students do in fact go to the school. They are 17, and in fact I'm explaining to you why it's actually a bigger problem that they do in fact go to the school and that they are 17. These are children, make no mistake about that. But like I said, I want to address, the first thing is whether or not the situation surrounding the shooting itself is suspicious. Abso-fucking-lutely. You're absolutely correct. It is very, very suspicious, actually. So a few things. As you all know, I think the common knowledge is Nicholas was expelled from school. He was known to be a little mentally unhinged, if you will. He was a little bit unstable. Okay, he wasn't all the way right in the head. This was not only confirmed, obviously, by some of the students who know him at the school currently, but if you all know, Elijah Manley, who is running for school board at large, is only 1 year removed from Stoneman Douglas as an alumni. He also is a former presidential candidate for the Green Party. He actually said that this guy used to bring in dead animals, insects, to the class for people to see. This essentially, what we find out time and time again is that this could have been prevented, and even the FBI acknowledged that. Now, some people are questioning whether or not it was not prevented on purpose, which once again I actually believe is a legitimate question, because I mean, we can look at the biggest example going on right now. How was 20% of the United States uranium not prevented from being given to Russia, unless you were purposely looking the other way, if you're Barack Obama, or if you're the Department of Commerce who was involved in that deal. You know, the people who would tend to be involved in these things. Now, I want to show you all briefly a clip of why this situation is kind of, I don't want to say it's unique, because the multiple school shootings have happened since January, but the circumstances surrounding this particular guy is in fact very unique. We're going to take a look at our guy, who you all probably, if you don't know him, you should definitely get to know him. His name is Ben Swann. Ben Swann is absolutely amazing. He was so honest, and it's okay. So it's very rare. So for myself, right? Obviously, I'm an independent journalist. I write, I do research, I investigate, but I have my opinions, my assumptions, my objectivity, or excuse me, my subjectivity at times, and it could be hard for anybody to dichotomize objectivity with subjectivity with any independent journalist. However, Ben Swann is probably the one who has perfected objectivity, in fact-based investigative research that is still palatable by the general population. Blame it on resources, blame it on, you know, you can give credit to whatever you want to give credit to, but at the end of the day, credit is definitely due to Ben Swann. And this guy has had such an amazing track record. If you've never listened to him before, I urge you all to go to his YouTube page, go to his Facebook page. This was the guy who was busting Pizzagate wide open, to the point where they took him off of the air, and his colleagues were upset about it, visibly so. They expressed how pissed off they were, and they were talking about how they wanted to be as transparent as possible, and to help people understand that they didn't want him gone. Somebody from upstairs called, because the video that he did exposing Pizzagate was talking about Bill Clinton's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and then after he was convicted, he tried to distance himself from Jeffrey Epstein, but still hung out with Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand woman, who was responsible for finding children. In fact, that woman was invited to Clinton's wedding. So this is a while, excuse me, not Clinton, to Chelsea Clinton's wedding, which wasn't that long ago. So that's why, I mean, and this is once again something that only Ben Swann would end up finding out. And so that's why I don't mind using him as a source when talking about something as controversial as this. Give me a second. Let me go ahead and get that pulled up for you.
know much more about Cruz's background, which, by the way, includes a number of very disturbing reports of police calls to his home. For instance, according to police reports first obtained by CNN, police responded to Cruz's home 39 times, 39, over a 7-year period. Details about the calls to the Broward County Sheriff's Office have not yet shown, though, if Cruz was involved in all of those. But what we do know about those police calls, this according to KTLA, those included calls of a mentally ill person, child and elderly abuse, domestic disturbance, and a missing person. We also know this, that according to the New York Times, last fall, a bail bondsman in Mississippi spotted a disturbing comment on his YouTube channel. It said, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter." Take a look. The bondsman, Ben Midnight, took the screenshot. He then flagged the comment to YouTube. He even left a voicemail message at his local FBI field office, alerting it to the comment. The name of the person, as you can see there, who wrote the comment, Nicholas Cruz. And there's more. ABC News reports that law enforcement sources say that Cruz claimed he heard voices in his head giving him instructions for the attack. And those voices were described as demons. So let's summarize here. At this point, it appears that Cruz very likely suffered from extreme mental health issues, and yet he was able to legally buy a Smith & Wesson M&P 15-223, according to Peter Forselli, special agent in charge of the Miami office for the ATF. Now, federal law, it does allow for people ages 18 and older to legally purchase long guns, including that kind of weapon with no criminal record. Now, Cruz, he cleared an instant background check via the FBI criminal database. See, if somebody is adjudicated mentally defective or has been committed to a mental institution, they're prohibited from possessing a firearm under federal law. But Cruz had not been flagged by the proper authorities. So what has the response been from the media? That it is President Trump's fault, they say, because he and the Republican Party have actually made it easier for people with mental health problems to buy assault weapons. Listen.
It's almost like they don't want to admit that the first materially significant legislation this president signed was specifically and only designed to get more guns into the hands of more seriously mentally ill people.
Thoughts and prayers are fine, but why is Donald Trump impotent? Why is he impotent when it comes to this? He's supposed to be man of action. He is letting our children get slaughtered.
After mass shootings, the White House tendency is to say, wait, gather facts, and there have been no calls for restrictions on access to firearms.
So is that true? Did the GOP pass and then President Trump sign a repeal of an Obama-era directive to keep guns out of the hands of people with severe mental illness? No, that's not actually what happened. What did happen was this. It's HJ Resolution 40. It was signed by President Trump on February 28, 2017. According to the BBC, it repealed an Obama-era rule that would have affected about 75,000 U.S. citizens who are too mentally ill to handle their own disability benefits. The Obama measure, it actually covered those of marked subnormal intelligence or mental illness, incompetency, condition, or disease. It also ordered the U.S. Social Security Administration, which administers benefits, to add those names to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. And this is what the media is jumping all over. But what they are not telling you is the incredible groundswell of opposition to that rule from at least 15 mental health organizations. That includes the American Association of People with Disabilities, and even the ACLU led the charge against this measure, saying it was unconstitutional and wrong.
So, given what we just saw, now once again, I don't want to go into, if you don't have confidence in Ben Swann, in his investigative research ability, then you just need to go watch this video, because I really don't have time to qualify his legitimacy, which is beyond, I mean, beyond compare. He is legit for somebody like myself, who is an independent journalist, who values transparency and using a large platform to bring the truth to the public. Ben Swann is an absolute hero, and many people revere him as such. So when I tell you that he's not going to bring anything into the forefront unless it is verified, you can take my word on that. And if you don't want to take my word on it, make sure that you go to his YouTube page, make sure you go to his Twitter, Facebook, go to his website, Reality Check, and check him out, seriously. Because once again, his objectivity shines through and lets us know what the real motives, what the real questions should be but these aren't the real questions that are being asked. Now, like I said earlier, this district is Debbie Wasserman Schultz district, the same district that Tim Canova is currently competing in. Now, Tim Canova, obviously the progressive, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, not the progressive, but I think it's probably a little bit more important than that, which is that what is the goal for Democrats, period, point blank, in 2018 and 2020? Win back the House, win back the Senate, win back the executive office. That is really what this entire discussion is about. Although people, which is, like I said, I'm not at all surprised that people would assume that there are crisis actors. If you all don't recall, in Syria, in Aleppo specifically, Al Jazeera had people go into Syria and pretend to be in Aleppo and pretend like that was going to be the last video, because they were just under a ridiculous amount of onslaught and war coming from the Syrian government. However, that turned out not to be the case. It turned out to be actors, which people should have been immediately suspicious when they were live streaming from high definition iPhones. That was my first clue, but I understand everybody's not like myself, so I get that. But so crisis actors are real. That happens. I just want to be clear about that. However, you don't have to be a crisis actor to be ambitious. Does that make sense? You don't have to be a crisis actor to be ambitious. You don't have to be a crisis actor to do what you're told. Let me see if I can pull this up really fast. I'm gonna pull this up. I'm gonna pull up a Twitter account. I'm gonna show you all. So if you can see this account, this is Emma Gonzalez. If you know anything about marketing, social media, the dynamics of, how politics and you can be elevated right to a large platform on social media by being part of something huge. But there are limitations. One, there are limitations. Two, you're oftentimes limited to your network as well. Okay, so those are two huge factors that need to be considered whenever having this discussion, because one thing, as a contributor, as a video content creator, and as a quote unquote public figure, I am constantly in contact with Twitter. One of the reasons that I contact them so often is because I was trying to get verified, because I had seen a couple of profiles had either had tried to slander me or copy me, and so I was like, let me go ahead and get verified. So I don't know if you all know this, but as you recall, there was a huge rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, and there was a bunch of neo-Nazis who accidentally got verified, obviously violating Twitter's community guidelines. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Unless something has changed, we're gonna find out together right now. Twitter doesn't even have a verification page up anymore, and I'm gonna explain why that is in a second as well. So look, application for and verification for Twitter. Check back soon. Request to verify. I don't know if you all can see this, but it says this is the verification.twitter.com. Check back soon. If you're listening on the podcast, you're gonna take my word for it. But so it says request to verify, check back soon. Now, the reason why it says that is more important. The reason why it says that is because they've been spending time re-verifying to make sure they don't have anyone violating their community standards. And actually, issued a statement specifically saying that no matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter how long you've been established, no matter what your following looks like, you will not be verified until Twitter reopens the verification process. Now, why is this important? As you can see, Emma Gonzalez only has 155 tweets. But Emma Gonzalez has 269,000 followers. I want to look at somebody who would be comparable. So Linda Sarsour, who was on the chair of the Women's March, extremely popular, and sometimes somewhat in the progressive movement, mostly not. I won't say the neoliberal movement, but sometimes she falls within that centrist neoliberal conversation, depending on what she's in the news for that day. Linda Sarsour has been around for quite some time, okay, and she has been in the news more often than Emma Gonzalez has, especially for the Women's March. And you all remember how not only nationally acclaimed in mainstream media, but really internationally acclaimed as well. That Women's March was extremely popular, and Linda Sarsour has been very popular because of her involvement there. Now, Linda Sarsour is also very active on Twitter and had a following before the Women's March. And look at this, people. Look at this. I left for a second and came back. She got 2,000 followers. She went from 269,000 to 271,000. She has 155 tweets. You want to know what her first tweet was? If it loads up fast enough, I'm gonna show you. It's because I want people to see this as to why. Look, now this cover. Now this. Good God, people. Her first tweet. And I'm gonna keep scrolling down so we can see it. But her first tweet was literally, I bullshit you not, 3 days ago. This is a picture with the crew. Oh, these two are extremely interesting. And a matter of fact, I need to check her out too. What a surprise. So we're going to talk about that in a second. Oh yeah, that's exactly what I expected, believe it or not. So moral of the story is, and I don't want to, if it takes too long to scroll down, I want to have to keep scrolling down. But the moral of the story is, people, 271,000 subscribers and a verification check mark that was given, and she's been on Twitter for all of 3 days. It's almost as if they're anticipating her being a public figure for a long time, because that's the only time really that you can even get a verification. But like I said, what makes this suspicious is the fact that Twitter has made it a blatant, I don't know how, I've applied for it twice, and then they just totally removed it, giving me the explanation that they were not verifying anybody, and that, which is why, once again, that page, like I just showed you, if you go to verification.twitter.com, it specifically says that you can't be it says check back. It's been saying that since October. So we got to get to the why this is important. So she's verified. Emma Gonzalez, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying one way or another how she looks, but what I am saying, this picture does not look like her. Why Twitter decided before she was even anybody, once again, this isn't to offend her. This isn't saying she's a crisis actor, people. This is the fact. Why Twitter doesn't verify anyone in 3 days. Unless you are like a signed artist or the president. Which 9 times out of 10, you're verified before you get to any of those points. So let's look up another person. This is everybody's favorite topic. This is everybody's favorite topic. David Hogg. You know how many followers he had this morning? I'm gonna tell you exactly how many followers he had this morning. Oh man, sorry about that, everybody. My sound went out for some reason. Look, they're trying to hold me back. They're trying to hold me back, people. I apologize, but in case you just missed what I just said, Twitter was not allowing anybody to be verified. And this is not only I've gotten messages from Twitter telling me this, which is why they couldn't verify me at the moment. And Twitter released multiple articles about it, and the reason why is because it was in response to the fact that they had accidentally verified a bunch of white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and alt-right people, despite the fact that those people had clearly violated community standards. Now, that is why it is important to understand how serious it is that these kids were in a shooting. They have, they do a little organizing, and now they're verified with hundreds of thousands of subscribers of followers. That is, once again, not me saying that they are crisis actors. That is not what I am saying, because they are not crisis actors. In fact, I would say it's even worse to a degree. And the reason why is because I am under the impression that this was co-opted, that the deaths of students, that the death of children, kids, were co-opted. Let me see if I can. David Hodge, this morning at 6:06 a.m., for those of you who are listening, today's date is Wednesday, the 21st. This morning, David Hodge had 55.7 thousand followers. This evening, and he had 55.7 thousand followers. And he had 55 tweets this morning. Don't quote me on that. I didn't get to save that, but I remember having like 55 tweets. So this evening he has 288 tweets. Now he has 96,600 followers. Okay. Emma Gonzalez this morning. We'll go back to Emma. Emma Gonzalez this morning had 204.6 thousand. Make sure everybody can hear me. They had 204. She had 204.6 thousand. Today alone, 271,000. That's an increase of what? 65,000 roughly. Y'all don't see how weird that is? Because if you don't see how weird it is, we can go see one more. Actually, we can see two more. I'm gonna show you. Hold on. Boom, boom, boom. Mr. Cameron Kasky, he's my favorite. I'm gonna tell you why he's my favorite in a second too. Pull over. It's just not what CNN does. So once again, I'm gonna let you. If I can find this damn. I'm gonna let y'all be the judge. I'm gonna let y'all be the judge of this. Women's March endorsement. Interesting. Come on, where is it at? I just saw her. I'm looking for the I don't know if y'all remember the profile earlier that I showed. I was like, I'm gonna come back to it. That's what I'm looking for right now. With the there it goes. Boom, found it. Delaney Tarr, student, journalist, fighter. This is her. So you have a student who is a journalist right here in Delaney. David Hodge writes for the Sun Sentinel, whose dad is a retired FBI agent. Cameron Kasky, who has a profile with merely 2 200 followers that he made private. I wish I'd have screenshot it before he did that, but he made his profile private, which means, what that really means though is that he had no legitimate influence, as most high schoolers and 17-year-olds do not have, before this particular instance happened. Yet he made another profile for this particular situation, and it was verified. Now, that's not how Twitter works. In fact, if he has two profiles, the other one, sorry, sound went out again. Yeah, so if he had, so with Delaney, she's a journalist, like I was saying. David is a journalist for the Sun Sentinel, based in South Florida, and his father is a retired FBI agent. Okay. Now, why is the Sun Sentinel important? Well, the Sun Sentinel itself is actually important specifically because it is a neoliberal publication. They spent a good majority of the Democratic primary either attacking Bernie or attacking Tim Canova. Okay, so you hopefully you're catching on, because like I said, Cameron Kasky right here, so journalist, and this guy who organized the quote unquote March for Our Lives got to write an article in CNN on their website, shared hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of times. Now, are y'all starting to see? Hopefully, y'all are starting to see what is important, because that's what I'm trying to illustrate right now. It's what you should be taking from this is, you don't have to be a crisis actor to be an ambitious teenager to have your movement co-opted. Now, how am I so absolutely sure that it's co-opted? Well, have you seen one critique of the Democrats? Or better yet, I'd like to give you all another example. If you all recall, during the Women's March, many of us went into the Women's March believing that it was going to be about women's issues, right? When I first went to the Women's March in New York, I thought it was going to be about women's issues. I thought they were going to talk about substantive policies so that we can conquer a lot of the inequities that women deal with. And I was totally about that. I was all ramped up. You know, I didn't have no pussy hat on. I wasn't that far into it. But I was definitely about the Women's March. And then when I got there, I noticed this pattern to such a degree that I had to ask someone who was beside me. And I said, well, I'm sitting here, so I might as well interview her. And I said, excuse me. I said, what do you think this march is about? And she said it's an anti-Trump rally. And I said, what? Because like I said, if I knew that it was just a quote-unquote anti-Trump rally and that's it, when even it came, I don't have time for that nonsense. But like you all know, that was not it. That was not the case. Or excuse me, that was the case. And then I asked the woman's friend. The woman's friend said it was a pro-Hillary rally. Mind you, that was not my impression either. I was under the impression, once again, that it was about women's issues. What I mean to say by this is, you can have a movement that is based off of a legitimate experience, off of a real experience. You can have a movement that comes and stems from pain, like what these students at Parkland experienced. But one thing that I always preach, is that recognize the patterns. If CNN, MSNBC, now this, Twitter, Facebook, every single major publication, every fucking where is telling you, listen to these kids. And then all the kids talk about, once again, this is not an attack on the kids. The kids they're still young. Like, I don't think that they're doing anything nefariously. I think that they're being guided. So if you were to tell me they're being coached, I would say you're probably right about that. Otherwise, like, think about that. You got 3 journalists, and I don't know what Emma's profession was before she became a student at Parkland. I don't know what she was specializing in school, but I do know that David Cameron, and I can't remember her name, Durari, whatever her name was. Either way, Delaney, something to that extent. They were all journalists. They were all comfortable being in the public eye. That is what they aspired to be. And once again, they've all, how many times, think of, if you know what, I know who's gonna understand me. Where my organizers at? When I say where I ask that question, because my organizers know I don't give a damn who you know. You're not organizing multiple buses, multiple rallies, and then simultaneously getting 1.5 million at this point, with a goal of 2 million. By the way, raise 1.5 million in 2 days. Oh, and then on top of that, get a ridiculous amount of crowds. Also, get your permits squared away. In multiple cities, have a protest in the capital of Florida, also has a protest in Broward and Parkland, and has a protest in what, there was one yesterday in DC, and there's going to be a big one coming up. That doesn't happen, people. And then to put icing on the cake, now you got to convince me that, or now you have to ask the question, why is CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times, and all the neoliberal publications so quick, to talk about this movement when there were 200 shootings since the beginning of this school year? Or since the beginning of the year, excuse me. Why is this one being talked about to such a degree? You think it has anything to do with the fact that the Russiagate narrative is falling flat? Do you think it has anything to do with the fact that perhaps they've run out of things to talk about? Do you think it has anything to do with the fact that 2018 is coming? Well, 2018 is here, and the Democratic primaries are coming, and the general election is coming. You think it has anything to do with the fact that the Women's March, yeah, a lot of people would support that, and if it was what it was, I feel like even if it was what it should have been, more people would have supported. But everyone, because of society, the way society works, can't get behind or empathize or sympathize with women's issues. Just like everybody can't get behind, sympathize, or empathize with black issues, which is why the Democratic Party avoided, up until very, very recently, avoided discussing black issues, avoided discussing women's issues. There's a reason for that. So what is the one thing, people, that everyone can unite behind? A dead child in your country. This is not the first school shooting. It won't be the last, unfortunately. But like you saw in the Ben Swan video, they're claiming that Trump, they're claiming that Trump did something that he didn't do actually, which is, once again, you gotta call a spade a spade. Even if you don't like Trump, you can't make stuff up about him saying that he allowed mentally ill people to get weapons. No, what he did was the ACLU and other progressive left-wing civil rights groups complained about a legislation that Barack Obama implemented. And he conceded to the progressive group, saying that it was unconstitutional, that it was not fair, and that it did place a negative stigma on people, on mentally ill people, or mentally disabled people. It was just based off of, can you handle your finances, people? That's all the litmus test was for whether or not you should be entered into a criminal database, is whether you could mentally handle your finances. And that's why Trump repealed that legislation or overrode it, because it wasn't fair and it does place a stigma, and ACLU was right. So when you combine everything we know, 3 journalists, all verified within, well, two of them were verified within the last 24 hours. They raised $1.5 million in 2 days, including a huge donation from George Clooney. They're getting airtime, the likes of which we did not see for something as huge and as impactful as Standing Rock. They're getting airtime that Uranium One still hasn't received. They're getting airtime that the reality of the Russiagate scandal hasn't received. They're getting airtime that the corruption of the Democratic Party has not received. They want to continue to lambast the Republicans, saying that you're taking NRA money and that's what's influencing your decisions. And I'm not going to say that that's not true. I do believe that. But I don't know if y'all recall, we had this black guy in office one time, right? Had a crazy obscure name, something like Barack Obama. He was a Democrat. And at one point in time, he had all the marbles, if you will. In other words, he could have implemented or discussed or passed or even did an executive order to do an ban on assault rifles. But he did not do so. He talked about it. He did some things, a couple of things, but it wasn't like a clear ban on assault rifles, for example. And in this particular situation, he based whether or not people should be able to get a gun or not off of whether they can handle their finances, which didn't really solve the problem, because most mentally ill people go undiagnosed and then clearly still get through the cracks, like what we saw with Nicholas de Cruz. If you want to talk about other factors that are just overall weird, Nicholas de Cruz was found at Subway. He went to Subway and Walmart. He was arrested and he was taken alive. At the time of the shooting, he was walking around a girl, this is covered by our local news, I did a video about it. You should definitely go check that out if you have not. But a girl who was his classmate said she was walking beside him as shots went off, and even had a full conversation with him. Now, if this guy was, by the kids, seen as the guilty culprit, because if you don't know what an AR-15 looks like, it isn't small, people, and it isn't easy to hide. If he was unquestionably the guilty culprit, he wouldn't have been able to sneak off to Walmart, Subway, whatever, with a bunch of students and blend in. What I'm saying is not necessarily that he didn't do it. I believe that he probably came to the school, killed 1 or 2 people, and thought that was going to be the end of it. But I do believe that there was an accomplice. That's what the girl said. She said, yeah, the shots went. She said, no, there were definitely multiple shooters. Definitely. Now, why the other shooter isn't being talked about, I do not know. That's a different conversation for a different day. But what I am saying is that people's suspicions are very legitimate. And I think that the questions being asked should be addressed in a way that isn't, oh, if you're saying that those students are crisis actors and you're a fucking dumbass. Like, I get it. Like, okay, we don't want to call them crisis actors because there's a negative conspiratorial like connotation to that. But you may not be crisis actors, but you were definitely prepared for the moment, and that is why people are so confused, because there's no way that a 17-year-old has the network to organize a march that has raised $1.5 million in 2 days, and also 4 17-year-olds they're closing in on 1 million followers between the 4 of them right now. That is not normal. I just showed you all the profile of Linda Sarsour, 206,000, and has been involved in politics 3 to 4 years, board of the Women's March. You know, she gets her CNN time and her MSNBC time, and she doesn't even have close to those amount of followers, even though she's been in the news multiple times on both the left and the right. And yet, once again, it's if you don't think that's suspicious, you try to organize an event in 2 days after. Like I said, I was at Standing Rock. I know people who organized for Standing Rock. I was at the protests in New York. For Standing Rock. I was at the protests for you know how long it took to organize the protests in DC on Inauguration Day? We had 6 months in advance, or 3 months or 4 months in advance for that, and that even took a while, people. You know how long it takes to plan a conference with just a bunch of people speaking and that's it? Do you know how long it takes to get a permit? Do you know how long it takes to organize buses? How did you reserve buses? How did you organize a nationwide walkout in a couple of days, people? Who paid for your website? Why is it so well organized? Listen, I can almost guarantee, and I don't know this for a fact, I have to look it up, but I guarantee this march is already a 501c3 or a 501c4, registered as a nonprofit, and I'm almost 100% positive also that is going to be one of those situations like the Women's March. This is all about getting Trump out of office, not holding people accountable, because if we're going to talk about why the GOP keeps taking money from the NRA and allowing that to influence its decisions, how about we start talking about the fact that the Democratic Party isn't taking money from the NRA, and it's for some reason still not pulling through on the promises and the ideals that they are claiming to represent. How about we have that conversation? Now these kids are young, so they don't know what the hell's going on when Obama was in office. Once again, if you want to claim that they may be being coached, I would probably agree with you. If you want to claim that there is a potential for them to have been co-opted, I would 100% agree with you. I don't think they're crisis actors, but I do think they were ready for the moment. It's an important distinction to make. I think there are a lot of suspicious circumstances. So I truly hope that you all are, if you're having this conversation, have it in the right context, people. If you're having this conversation, have it in the right context. Talk about the reality of it, which is that CNN, MSNBC, all these media outlets, they don't show, if it's about real change, they don't show it. They don't advertise it. Period, point blank. If it's about real change, it will not be on CNN. If it's about real change, it will not be on MSNBC. Hell, if it's about real change, it won't even be on Fox News. But specifically when we're talking about quote unquote leftist issues, if it's about real change, it will not show up. It won't be advertised. It won't trend on Twitter. It won't trend on Facebook. You don't end up on Now This. You don't end up writing a publication as a 17-year-old kid. You don't get $500,000 donations from George Clooney. You don't get verified in a day after you've only made 30 tweets. You don't get verified in 2 days if nobody knew who you are. You can't organize a rally and get the permits and raise the money and get all this TV time. And do you see how ridiculous it is to really think that there is not an ulterior motive by the Democrats being exercised right now, as if they don't have a history of co-opting real movement based off of real pain and real experiences from real people for their own political agendas. think that's a pretty reasonable belief. So, with that being said, thank you all so much for listening. Sorry, I apologize for all the complications. Like I said, this is the first time that I've done this format before, and so thank you all for bearing with me while I did this. Obviously there's some sound cuts in the video itself, so if you still want to hear the entirety of this show without it being cut off, you can go to the podcast at podbean.com/MCSC Politics, or you can go listen. Just look me up on iTunes, Nico House, NIKOHOUSC, and you can find me there as well. Like I said, I don't think this is controversial because it's been pushed into the category of controversial. However, when you get down to it, the facts are there are enough facts to, at the very bare minimum, determine that this movement, these deaths, these experiences have been co-opted by the neoliberal establishment left in order to further their political agenda in 2018 and 2020. If that I don't know how much more clear you can make that when 3 high school journalists and one, from what I can tell at this point, random girl who was involved, end up being plastered all over the nation in merely days. Okay, so thank you all so much for tuning in. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I am excited because, like I said, this is the first time that we've done this type of format, and for the most part, outside of the sound issues in the initial getting started, because it was just a couple of hiccups, this actually went better than I expected, so I'm not going to be mad at it. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, always remember, find your balance. Peace.